Oh, hello, fam. It seems that you are joining me today, and I'm happy to see you. Well, it's Mindset Monday. It's Mindset Monday. It's the time of day where we get our mindset right. So I hope that you're ready to get your mindset right. We're going to be talking about limits today, and it's going to be awesome. There you go, buddy. So with that being said, we're just going to hop into it, because why not? Right? Let's just hop into it. So, we're talking about limits. We're talking about limits today. And I'm kind of excited because there's a lot that's been coming up in terms of just reflecting on what limits are present in my life at this time. The good, the bad, the ugly. So in this live stream, we are going to be talking a little bit about good versus bad versus maybe mutual limits, as well as what we can do in our mindset, in our mind, to kind of utilize limits to better master our mind. I hope that you are ready, because this is going to be a pretty short live. It's going to be hopefully to the point. And yeah, let's just get right into it. Okay, so limits. We know that a limit is a constraint or a restriction put on something, okay? Whether it's like the number of coupons you can use in the store, or free samples. I don't know why I'm getting that. Probably because I need to go grocery shopping after this. But there are many limits. In our mind, we have limiting beliefs. So limiting beliefs are kind of, well, you can't breathe underwater. That's kind of a limiting belief right there, so you don't really try to breathe underwater because, it's not really something that you can think of doing. So much love, Meditative Juice, Mindset Monday. You already know. Let's get you out here. Let's get you out here. Okay, we will. And what's good, the community of new knowledge? Much love, peace. So let's be real. There are good and bad limits, and then sometimes there are mutual limits. We're going to talk about them. So let's talk about the bad limits first, okay? I don't know why I had to take a moment to think about it. So bad limits, as you may know, are these limiting beliefs that we have, right? So and this is rooted into the root chakra, because it's connected to our ancestors, it's connected to our lineage, it's connected to what we have been risen into, right? This is like the limits of our, and I'm using this example, your family grows with not a lot of money, or a certain mindset around money. Now, maybe this limitation is that they refuse to do something with their money. Let's say, I don't know why this came to me. They refuse to invest their money in certain things. This is a limit. So you were raised to believe that, okay, we don't invest our money, we don't buy this. This is a limit. I don't know why that limit came up. This could also be just a limit with interacting with humans, especially with families. Maybe there's a limit that you can't interact with a certain group of people. And so you, without even realizing, grew up with this limiting belief that, you gotta not talk to certain kinds of people. I don't know why, again. These are the kinds of examples that are coming into my head, but it's for a reason. I trust that. I have faith that it's going to help serve somebody in some way. And that's what I'm here for. Okay, so a bad limit is a limiting belief. It's usually something that you're not fully aware of, okay? This is something that's kind of ingrained in our subconscious mind. It's there. It's actually holding us back. This is something that maybe we even see with so many things, like our manifestations, what we believe we can manifest. We have a limit on that, especially with, again, going back to our ancestors and family, our lineage, where we come from. If they didn't think of manifesting, certain aspects of reality that you want to manifest or have thought about, but maybe it's literally just manifesting being debt-free. Okay, so that's a good example. Now, there are a lot of families that believe that you have to go in debt for whatever reason, and like the limiting belief is that there's no way for you to like be financially independent. All right, so you subconsciously have that seed in your mind, and you go throughout your day, and you don't even realize that you're picking up debt because it's normal to you. This is a limit that's normal to you, and it's not normal to everybody else, but it's so deeply ingrained in your subconscious mind that you don't realize it. And so when we think about manifesting, the first thing that we do is we acknowledge these subconscious limits that are blocking us from fully realizing that manifestation. And a lot of the times it requires us to go deep into our root chakra, go deep into where the fears are coming, because fears are a limitation as well. Fears tell you not to do things, right? Fears tell you to go in the other direction. Fears tell you to resist this. This is a limit. This is where we stop. We don't go any further. So you have to really go dive deep into your ancestral fears, you know, the karmic debt that's kind of there, that's leaving you feeling like you can't move forward or reach that manifestation. And before I go on to the next kind of limit, which is a neutral limit, it's important to acknowledge that when you first, it's like learned helplessness. It is something that you can train yourself out of. You can train yourself out of these limits, but you first have to realize that it is even there. And I think that's the hardest part with these bad limits, because you don't even realize they're limiting you, and they don't have to be limiting you. And a lot of the times they're, generally speaking, blocking some aspect of your being that you want to bring more energy into or fruition. So yeah, do the inner work. Check in, like talk to your family members. You'll see the patterns in their behavior, in the way that they share. Really see if you can use your selective attention to be aware of when they start talking about some of the limits that they're facing, or the things that they say it like it's a matter of a fact. Like they say these things like it's a matter of a fact, when in reality it's not a matter. I mean, it is matter, but it's moving matter. You can move that matter. It's not as solid as they may believe it to be. So that's the limiting beliefs, kind of bad learned limits that, generally speaking, are something that we pick up on without even realizing it as we grow up and inherit, you know, the mind and the thoughts and the belief systems of our family members and, you know, our lineage, our ancestors. So important, if you are really wanting to do the deep inner work, to tap into actually talking to your family or observing your family, looking for these cues so that you can better understand what's going on in here and can address those limiting beliefs. So we're going to move on to neutral limits now. So neutral limits they're just limits. Like, they're just things that are there. Like, gravity is a limit. It's not like good or bad, it's just a limit. And neutral limits are really just, these are a matter of fact kind of situations. Like, this is just a limit that is here. So it's a little bit tricky, because you see with a bad limit, you're not really aware that it's blocking you from the desired state of energy that you want to manifest. You think that you got to go around or do loopholes, when in reality you really just have to address that limit and clear it, and it's as simple as that. And then you have surrendered or sacrificed that limitation, that energy of resistance, so it can now flow. So neutral limits don't move. They are not supposed to. It's like you need to breathe air to live. That's a limit. Like, we have to breathe, you know, we have a nose and a mouth, and we have to get oxygen into our lungs. Like, that's a limit. Like, your skin color is a limit. The way you were born is a limit. You know, the things that you were given, these are neutral limits, and most of the time they can't change. You know, this is something that we have to accept. And with neutral limits, we don't want to like force ourselves or resist them, because that's not going to do anything except waste our energy. So when you're faced with a neutral limit that you may view as bad, it's better to actually take a moment to acknowledge it, take a step back, honor the limit that is showing itself, because there's always a way to leverage these neutral limits. Okay, you need to breathe air. Like, okay, find the blessings in these neutral limits. Like, limits are not good or bad. They're just containers to hold things together and keep them in a rigid form. of sorts. So honor the limits and see what you can really learn and take away from the limits. Every single limit that comes your way, they're all kind of neutral until you put a label on them, whether you're resisting them or, they're assisting you. So that leads me to the last kind of limit, which is a good limit. And a good limit is, I think the best example is time. Time is also a neutral limit, but we can leverage these neutral limits for the betterment of ourselves. So time is a great way. Yeah, there are some people we have 24 hours in a day. That's a given. That's a neutral limit. But what we do with that time in terms of how we may limit our time spent with certain things is really where we can see the good limit starting to take place. So a good limit would be okay, I'm not going to drink more than this. I'm not going to spend my time doing more than this. Right? So you're setting those limits in order to keep your life and your energy structured, because that is the purpose of a limit. It's there to create a restriction and a structure for the energy to flow into and to be. So setting good limits is so important, and this is what we're talking about today in this Mindset Monday. I'm so happy, community of New Knowledge, that you're finding some value and it's inspirational. I appreciate you, fam, and check out their channel if you haven't already. They got some awesome stuff. But yeah, so we want to think about how we can make good limits for ourselves, because ultimately that's what we want. We want our mind to be set up in such a way that we've created these flows and this energy system within our own mind that allows the energy to go into its assorted boxes, if that makes sense. So you understand that time is a good limit when you utilize it properly. It is a neutral limit, but when you leverage neutral limits, and you can leverage all limits to be good limits, honestly. But you have to first acknowledge what is the nature of this limitation. What is being limited? Is it my understanding or imagination or manifestation energy that can direct to grow, more? So really think about that, and I appreciate it, community of New Knowledge. How can you leverage these limits so that they can better serve a structure in your life and make life easier? I think that limits are supposed to make life easier. Gravity makes life easier. It's a limit that we love. So where can we leverage these limits? Even having a limit on your bank, your spending, these are good things, right? You need to have limits. So reframing your state of mind when it comes to limits, instead of seeing them as something that you constantly have to resist because, oh no, I gotta break free of all my limiting beliefs. Sometimes, pause, they're there for a reason. Sometimes they're actually assisting you in understanding the energy and how you can best use it and structure it. So yes, there is a time and a place to clear limiting beliefs, and there's a time to actually make limiting beliefs. People do this lots of ways. You could write a very specific statement that has a limit on, what action you want to do, when you want to do it, and where you want to do it. You're setting limits on these things. And because you set limits, guess what? The energy naturally flows into those spaces because you have then set the limit. It is happening. I'm doing this at this time in this place. You've set the limits. And because you've set those physical limits, the energy can now have a space to flow into. And that's the beauty of leveraging limitations, especially with your manifestations and especially with your mindset. So whether that's setting a routine for meditation and you want to set limits to actually assist you in blocking time to manifest more, you could say passionately or diligently, you would just say, I am going to meditate maybe every morning when I wake up. Okay, so what is a limit? Okay, well, we know that the action is meditate. Maybe you could get even more specific. Every day when I wake up, maybe you could get more specific on the time if you really wanted to. And then the last limit would be a place. When you set that place, you now have a station for your physical manifestation to come through. Every morning outside in my backyard. Okay, I'm gonna meditate every morning outside in my backyard. period. It sounds so simple, but really setting these limits, speaking them out loud, and mentally affirming in your mind, okay, I am going to do this with this restriction, this restriction, this restriction. It helps. Even with your goals, actually putting a date to your goals by limiting the amount of time that you have helps. If you're trying to write a book, like putting a date to limit that, time, limit the amount of pages that you're going to do if you're getting intimidated. Like, limits are good. We all have a limit, right? We all have a threshold where we reach our limit and we can't do anymore. So we need to know what our limits are. We need to be more aware of what our limits are in order to leverage them so that we can know where the energy flows best for ourselves. And so that's really why I'm making this video, just to remind you, like, hey, I'm like you. I have limits, and sometimes I'm not conscious of all of them, but the more I can be aware of why I'm taking certain actions and how the energy is physically manifesting. And that's the great thing about limits, is that you'll see like a physical manifestation of sorts, whether it's action or inaction, because limiting beliefs will cause you not to act a lot of the times, but you'll notice this in your mind, and that's a great thing. Your mind can detect these limits. It can label these limits for you. And how would you identify a limit? It would be something like I can't, or I've never, or using those kind of words, ... and you see it you see it more clearly, allowing yourself to even... There's so many things you can do with limits. Like, give yourself an opportunity to honor your limits and take a day or this week to really explore what kind of limits are put in place in your life right now. With your family, what kind of structures are there? What kind of limits are playing in that area? What kind of limits are you noticing are just a mutual part of your life? Whether it's like, you don't have a leg or something, these are aspects like, your human beingness, your diet, there are certain limits that we have that are kind of neutral limits. So allowing yourself to honor these limits actually allows you to leverage them more, allows the energy to flow as it should, and you don't have to spend all that energy resisting it because it's just naturally gonna flow into where it needs to. So honestly, limits are great. When you use them properly, you can set up systems for energy to flow into without you needing to use any additional energy. That's pretty cool. Like, the energy just knows where to go because you've boxed it in. So I hope that this is resonating with you. I hope that you got some good food for thought and that you will continue to explore your limits, how you can leverage them and honor them throughout the rest of your week. I am so thankful to take this time with you and to just explore this. I'm like salivating right now because I'm so excited and just thinking about all the limits I'm gonna be aware of, and I'm even gonna set a limit. I want to acknowledge 5 limiting beliefs within my family or friends or, group of social things. I want to acknowledge 5 mutual limits that I am going to honor, and just honor. And I'm going to acknowledge 5 limits that I want to leverage, 5 limits that I'm going to set for myself to assist in easing the energy flow and making it easier for me day to day. So I just set limits so that I actually do it, and my mind now knows that here are the limits, this is where the energy is going to go. So there you go. All right, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I really did enjoy being able to share this topic with you, and I will see you in the next video.